Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, the first generation to grow up with a smartphone in their hand before they could drive a car, the first generation to experience childhood through a screen, the first generation to have their entire social life judged publicly online before their brains were even fully developed. And now the data is coming in. And what it shows about the mental health of Gen Z is unlike anything recorded in human history. This is not a story about lazy young people. This is a story about an entire generation that was handed the most psychologically destructive tool ever invented at the most vulnerable moment of their development, and nobody warned them. Let us start with the numbers, because the numbers tell a story that is impossible to ignore. Between 2010 and 2020, rates of depression among teenagers increased by 60%, rates of anxiety disorders among young people increased by 70%, emergency room visits for self-harm among teenage girls increased by 189%. Suicide rates among young people aged 10 to 24 increased by 57% in one decade. These are not small changes. These are not statistical noise. These are catastrophic shifts in the mental health of an entire generation, and they all began at exactly the same time. Around 2012, the year smartphone adoption among teenagers crossed 50%, the year Instagram became the dominant social platform for young people, the year the algorithm became powerful enough to keep teenagers scrolling for hours without stopping. The correlation is not coincidence. The researchers confirmed it. The timing matches perfectly. The Voloscare psychologist Jean Twenge spent 25 years studying generational differences. Her conclusion about Gen Z was delivered in one sentence that shocked the academic world. She said, around 2012, the mental health of American teenagers fell off a cliff, not declined, not worsened, fell off a cliff, and the primary cause she identified was the smartphone combined with social media. Here is why it hit Gen Z so much harder than any generation before them. The human brain is not fully developed until approximately age 25. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation, is the last part to mature. Gen Z received smartphones at age 10, 11, 12 before this critical brain region had any significant development, which means they experienced infinite social comparison before they had the emotional tools to process it, public judgment and criticism before they had the resilience to handle it, algorithmic dopamine loops before their reward systems had established healthy baselines. The phone did not just change how Gen Z communicated, it rewired their developing brains during the most critical window of neurological formation. Every generation has dealt with social comparison. It is a fundamental human experience, but every previous generation compared themselves to perhaps 150 people they actually knew, their school, their neighborhood, their town. Gen Z compares themselves to millions of curated, perfect highlight reels simultaneously every single day for hours. And the social media algorithm does not show average people living average lives. It shows the most beautiful, the most successful, the most talented, the most wealthy, the most perfect, because perfect content generates more engagement. More engagement generates more revenue. More revenue is the only goal. A 13-year-old girl in 2012 was not comparing herself to her classmates anymore. She was comparing herself to supermodels, influencers, celebrities, and filtered versions of everyone she had ever met, all before 9 a.m. on a school day. Researchers at University College London found that social media use above 3 hours per day was significantly associated with poor mental health outcomes in adolescence. The average Gen Z teenager uses social media for 7 hours and 22 minutes per day, more than double the danger threshold every single day. Since they were children, there is a second mechanism destroying Gen Z mental health that works quietly in the background. Sleep. The adolescent brain requires between 8 and 10 hours of sleep for healthy neurological development. This is not a preference, it is a biological requirement, as critical as food and water during developmental years. Gen Z is getting an average of 6.5 hours per night, and the reason is the phone, specifically what happens in the bedroom after midnight. A 2023 study found that 72% of teenagers check their phone after midnight on school nights. Not occasionally, regularly. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin production. The stimulating content keeps the nervous system activated. The social anxiety of missing something makes putting the phone down feel impossible. And a sleep-deprived adolescent brain is not just tired, it is fundamentally compromised. Emotional regulation collapses. Anxiety increases dramatically. Depression risk multiplies. Academic performance falls. Social interactions suffer. The phone in the bedroom at night is not a small habit problem. It is a public health crisis happening in 72% of teenagers' bedrooms every single night. Here is the most painful paradox of the Gen Z experience. The most connected generation in human history is also the loneliest. Gen Z has more ways to communicate than any generation before them: text, Snap, DM, FaceTime, Discord, TikTok, BeReal, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, more platforms, more connections, more followers. And yet, a 2021 survey found that Gen Z reported the highest levels of loneliness of any generation currently alive, higher than millennials, higher than Gen X, higher than baby boomers, higher than the silent generation who lived through wars and isolation. The most digitally connected generation is the loneliest. Why? Because digital connection and genuine human connection are not the same thing. They activate different systems. They fulfill different needs. They produce different neurological outcomes. Genuine face-to-face connection releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, lowers cortisol, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, creates real felt sense of belonging. Scrolling someone else's content releases dopamine temporarily, then crashes below baseline, creates comparison, not connection, leaves you feeling more isolated than before you open the app. Gen Z traded genuine connection for digital simulation of connection, and the loneliness that followed is now measurable in their blood work. There is one more mechanism that makes Gen Z anxiety unique in human history: the algorithm. Previous generations experienced anxiety about things in their immediate world: their school, their relationships, their family, their future, real and proximate concerns. Gen Z experiences anxiety about everything happening everywhere on Earth simultaneously: climate collapse, economic inequality, political extremism, racial injustice, pandemic threats, nuclear risk, mass shootings, housing unaffordability. Not because these issues are not real and serious, they are, but because the algorithm has learned that anxiety content generates more engagement than any other emotional category. Fear keeps you scrolling, outrage keeps you scrolling, catastrophe keeps you scrolling. So the algorithm feeds these to the most impressionable, least emotionally developed, most neurologically vulnerable audience it can find: 13-year-olds at maximum dosage, continuously, without mercy, for profit. The result is a generation whose nervous systems are permanently calibrated to threat, who cannot distinguish between a genuine personal danger and a story about something happening on another continent that they have zero ability to affect, whose baseline anxiety level was set during childhood, at a point that previous generations would have considered a crisis state. This is not weakness. This is engineering. The poor sick Gen Z is not broken. Gen Z is responding rationally to genuinely irrational conditions, and the solutions are not complicated. They are just difficult in a world designed to prevent them. Solution 1: phone-free sleep. Every phone out of every bedroom, every night. Non-negotiable. This single change improves adolescent mental health outcomes more than almost any other single intervention. Solution 2: genuine FaceTime. Not FaceTime the app, actual face-to-face time. Unstructured time with other humans. No agenda, no performance, just being together in physical space. The nervous system needs this. Nothing digital replaces it. Solution 3: boredom tolerance. The ability to sit with nothing. No stimulation, no content, no entertainment, just existing quietly. This is the skill that social media destroyed first, and it is the skill that mental health depends on most. Solution 4: physical movement. Not for aesthetics, not for fitness goals. For neurological regulation, movement is the most effective anxiety treatment available, more effective than most medications for mild to moderate anxiety. Free, available, no prescription needed. Solution 5: one real conversation. One genuine conversation per day, not a text exchange, not a comment thread. A real conversation with another human about something that actually matters. This is the medicine Gen Z is most deficient in. Generation Z did not choose to be the most anxious generation. They were handed the most powerful behavior modification device ever created by human beings before they had the brain development to resist it, before they had the emotional tools to contextualize it, before anyone understood to contextualize it, before anyone understood what it would do to them. And now the data is in, and the data is devastating, but data is not destiny. The brain that was shaped by years of scrolling can be reshaped by years of different choices. Neuroplasticity does not have a generational cutoff. The phone can go in another room tonight, the walk can happen tomorrow morning. The genuine conversation can happen today. The algorithm can be interrupted, starting right now. Gen Z is not a lost generation. They are a generation that was handed an extraordinary challenge at an extraordinary time. And understanding that challenge clearly and honestly is the first step toward doing something about it. Subscribe to Deep Think for more videos every Thursday, revealing the hidden science behind everything affecting how we think, feel, and live. Which part of this video surprised you the most? Comment below right now. Deep Think personally replies to every single comment.